The fantasy football edition of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Bet365. Bet365 is offering new users a $1,000 risk-free bet. Sign up today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bet365. We're brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets as well, the sports betting research platform for player parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Use promo code CFBX for $20 off your first purchase. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Emerson Beery, joined by me, myself, and I today. We're running a tightrope with today's show. Half my keyboard keys don't work. I'm getting my computer fixed tomorrow. My dog just had ACL surgery over there and can't be moving at all. So I'm going to be scrambling during today's show not to misclick any buttons that'll click me out of this screen. And my dog tries to jump off the bed, I'm going to be flying over there really quick. So I'm walking the tightrope act by myself today, but going to be tackling the fantasy football waiver wire for week 10, everybody. And if you see me looking down a little bit this podcast, this will be me pulling up stuff on my phone because, of course, I can't be messing around with my computer too much. Otherwise, my computer keys are going to go crazy. So like I said, that is the tightrope we're dealing with today. To begin, we are going to be talking about, who else could we be talking about but Keaton Mitchell to begin this waiver wire podcast. Rostered in only 3% of sleeper leagues, but he was the RB5 in fantasy football in week 9. 9 rushes, 138 yards, and a touchdown. He is electric. I wish we could have seen him a little bit earlier on this season, but he seems to be he's going to be taking a role in this backfield. I know he only played a small percentage of the snaps this past week, but he needs to be getting the ball more. I think the Baltimore Ravens realize that as well. I don't think necessarily that goal line role is going anywhere for Gus Edwards. I still think that is going to be his area to work with, but Keaton Mitchell certainly making an argument to receive around 10 plus touches a game. I'm hoping to see that going forward. This is still running back by committee with Lamar Jackson arguably being the best running back there. So keep that in mind when you're bidding on Keaton Mitchell this week. But he's somebody who, if you have $30-$40 left of that FAAB budget, he is certainly still somebody I am still willing to throw $10-$12 on to see if he can take over that lead back role, because Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, they certainly have their moments. They're going to be there back there. But Keaton Mitchell is the most exciting player back there, the most electric player back there. So very excited to see what he can do going forward. One of the top ads of the week, arguably the top ad of the week. Up next, Joshua Dobbs. What a story. I don't know if you guys saw it, but, I saw a little clip of, Vikings head coach having a moment in the locker room before Joshua Dobbs got there, telling the guys, we need to be giving this guy a big standing ovation when he get here, make him get excited. So everybody goes crazy when Joshua Dobbs gets in there. It was a cool moment for the guy. Rough ending in Arizona. He deserves it. My goodness. I mean, this guy he's been playing football for so long, and he's just such a dependable backup, especially when you saw how the backup quarterbacks played this week. Joshua Dobbs, man, he's going to be making some money next year. He's going to be making money as one of the best backups in the NFL. It was extremely impressive to see what he did this week. He was getting the plays called in by Kevin McConnell, and then the players had to explain to him what the play was after he told them. That is absolutely incredible. It started off rough, but he got it done in the second half. Dobbs is, of course, not a player that you're considering rostering in one quarterback formats. However, in two quarterback formats, in the Superflex formats, Joshua Dobbs it's a terrific offensive situation. TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, players play. I heard somebody say that it was either maybe on one of the CBS or Underdog Fantasy Football podcasts, but players play, and that is totally true when you hear that quote. Like, we always think, oh, they're going to tank. Oh, they're going to let somebody sit. No, that's never how it works, okay? Owners want to sell tickets and make money. Players want to get out there, too. They don't want to let out down their teammates. Justin Jefferson's going to get back out there. And Joshua Dobbs, like I said, he's going to be floating in that mid-tier quarterback two territory, low-end quarterback two territory. He had some productive games with Arizona before the wheels kind of fell off. And this is a much better offensive situation than Arizona. Vikings defense are going to be playing from behind quite a bit, of course. So Joshua Dobbs, I expect, especially with Cam Akers with a season-ending Achilles injury, unfortunately, I do expect Joshua Dobbs to be throwing the football around quite a bit. Up next on my list, Noah Brown, coming out of nowhere. He had been playing over 50% of the snaps the last 3 weeks. Decent amount of targets, 6 targets. So that is 16 targets over 3 weeks, but he finally exploded for 153 yards and a touchdown. Noah Brown, I think we've seen what he is at this point. It was a little concerning for me to see that Nico Collins didn't get more work. I expected this kind of be his game. When C.J. Stroud's throwing for over 400 yards, you expect for more than 50 yards and a touchdown, but Noah Brown finds a way to get it done today. This is still, this was a perfect game for C.J. Stroud. Almost everybody made it home for fantasy. I don't think this is going to happen every week. Noah Brown is not a priority on the waiver wire for me this week. Maybe a couple bucks if you're wide receiver needy. He seems to be filling in currently for that kind of Robert Woods role. He's out there with Tank Dell and Nico Collins instead. When Robert Woods comes back, I still have a feeling, depending on his health going forward, how healthy that foot can be, I still expect Robert Woods to be out there predominantly. So Noah Brown, like I said, if you were really desperate, maybe a couple dollars, but Noah Brown, not a priority on the waiver wire for me this week. I'm going down the list on Sleeper here. Justin, my usual co-host, makes me the list here usually, and I've been working a lot, dealing with this dog, so I'm going down the Sleeper list here. Tommy DeVito is the fourth most added person, and this has to be a joke. That has to be kind of like a funny, like, oh man, fantasy managers having fun, because Tommy DeVito is horrible. He's a horrible quarterback, and I mean, he's third string, so what can you expect, really? But my goodness, he looks bad out there. This New York Giants receiving core, I mean, you might be better off not starting anybody if Tommy DeVito's your quarterback. I mean, he's barely going to score more than 0. He's going to be turnover prone. This offense is a disaster. Saquon Barkley is the only viable fantasy New York Giant at the moment. And I think that's going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. Daniel Jones out for the year. Tyrod Taylor on IR. Man, what are the Giants going to do back there? Tommy DeVito, not somebody I'm even considering in Superflex leagues. You can definitely probably find a position player or a flex player, even in your Superflex formats, that will outscore DeVito on every given week. So DeVito, not a priority for me. And I would not be surprised if the Giants, I mean, like you said, it always sounds good to tank in theory. Every fan's just like, tank, oh yeah, we're going to lose football games. But the Giants, everybody wants to put a respectable product out there. The only people who tank are the front offices, and even they don't fully do it because they want to sell tickets. And Brian Daboll is coaching for his future job security. They're going to be still trying to win football games. It wouldn't surprise me. I know the trade deadline already happened, but Carson Wentz, some names are out there on the free agent pool. Colt McCoy, there's a few names out there. It would not surprise me to see the New York Giants flirt with another quarterback out there, considering DeVito is definitely not it at the quarterback position. Up next, Tank Dell. He's rostered in 61% of sleeper leagues. And what that means probably is most of your leagues, especially if you're listening to this podcast, your prop Tank Dell's probably not on the waiver wire. But finished outside the top 45 wide receivers in his last 3 performances, could have been sitting out there, but was the wide receiver 1 over this past week. Wow. Tank Dell is like just one of the smallest players ever to grace a football field. So it's incredible to see what he was doing out there. Tank Dell, he's a better real-life football player, though, than a fantasy player. It's going to be a little bit inconsistent for Tank Dell. His body type just does not allow him to succeed on an every down basis. If he was getting 10 targets, 11 targets like he did this past week, every single week, he would not make it through a full season. So Tank Dell, he's going to be a boom or bust wide receiver 3. He's going to have some big weeks, but he's going to have to deal with the down weeks if you're playing Tank Dell consistently, because that's just not the type of player he is to have an every down role. So Tank Dell, somebody who, if he was on the waiver wire because it's getting thin, I'd spend over $20 on him, maybe. Depending if you had a large bug, at least $12. If you have 30 or 40 left, if you had more than that, I'd spend 20. Tank Dell, it's hard to find a dependable wide receiver 3, and he looks the part. CJ Stroud has a rapport with him, so Tank Dell, somebody certainly to get excited about going forward, and a dependable flex play, I think, going forward. I really liked him last week. He didn't make it home, but of course, the CJ Stroud was a mess against the Carolina Panthers, so I think good days are ahead for Tank Dell, but you're going to have to take the down weeks as well. Before we continue on with more waiver wire topics, I just want to give one more shout out to our friends at Bet365. We're brought to you by Bet365. Bet365 is the world's favorite sportsbook, trusted by over 88 million players worldwide. Props, sides, totals, live betting, Bet365 has you covered. If you like boosts, you're going to love Bet365, like a 30% profit boost on your NFL same-game parlay. Plus, they even have an early payout offer if your team goes up 17 points. Sign up today and choose from 2 bonus offers, either a $1,000 first bet, safety net, or bet $5, get $150 bonus bets. Just head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bet365. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bet365. Problem gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER. We are also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. Now I can play during basketball season too. You just select 2 more players, pick more and less in their projected stats, and place your entry. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the special leagues. A league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Want to play along some Prize Pick favorite players like rapper Meek Mills and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from the biggest names in the Prize Pick community each week. Prize Pick even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in place even if you are one of the players gets injured for football and basketball games. This is important. If you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with players is rebooted price and has insurance policies. Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have skills, you can turn $10 into $250. It is great. Prize Picks is one of the few places in Colorado that lets me place bets. I can bet the over or under on their fantasy points. I unfortunately can't bet the yards and fun stuff like that here in Colorado, but Prize Picks is one of the few places that still lets me bet those over-unders in my favorite place, that is fantasy football. Quick withdrawals, easy game plan, and an enormous selection of players and stats are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And of course, like I said, they are one of my favorite places here in Colorado, one of the few that gives me a chance to win. Do refer to, of course, and also, you know who else does a great job is Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has a way to play alongside your favorite fantasy players all season long: NFL, NBA, NHL, college basketball, and college football. Simply pick higher or lower on your favorite players, fantasy stats, and cash in. Of course, I tell you guys every week to be betting the under yes, the under on the big name quarterbacks. Justin Herbert this week, cash. Patrick Mahomes this week, cash. Josh Allen this week, cash. If you bet the under on these big name quarterback, people want to take the over. So take advantage, bet the unders on those big name players, because is exactly what the Vegas Sportsbook don't think that you're going to do. So watch along, make your picks, and maybe make a little cash over on Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. When you sign up with promo code SGPN, Underdog will also double your deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. All right. Thank you for bearing with me, everybody. We're going to be diving back into this waiver wire show. Taysom Hill up next. Number 1 tight end on the waiver wire. 59% of sleeper leagues. So he's rostered in a healthy amount. But if he isn't, let's ride this Taysom Hill wave, because it's not going to last all season. We've seen Taysom Hill have these kind of stretches in the past. He's never had, every time he's gotten this kind of role, it seems to dissipate eventually. But he's must start until this wave stops. He's been incredible over the last 3 weeks. 4 weeks, tight end 9, tight end 5, tight end 1, tight end 4. He's throwing passes. He's rushing. He's rushing the football, a consistent rushing role, 11 rushes this past week. Yeah, what else can you ask for in this desolate tight end position other than Taysom Hill being our savior? Yes, Taysom Hill, he's firing up, must start tight end. Unless you have one of the elite guys, you're throwing Taysom Hill out there. Would I rather start Taysom Hill over Kyle Pitts right now? 100%. It makes me want to cry. It makes me so sad. But Taysom Hill must start right now. If you're desperate at tight end, $12, $17, depending on if you have 30 or 40 bucks left. That's something I'd absolutely be willing to do for Taysom Hill. I don't even think CJ Stroud is worth talking about on the waiver wire. 76% of sleeper leagues, 78%. If you're one of the 22% of leagues that doesn't have CJ Stroud rostered, you can spend a healthy, even in one quarterback leagues, I'd spend a healthy. I'd spend 30, 40 bucks on him. He's easily locking in lineups. And you know what he hasn't had is I know he hasn't had as many top 5 games as Justin Fields has, even in limited games. But I'll tell you what he doesn't have is he doesn't have as many games outside the top 20 quarterbacks as Fields does, and he's played a fewer games. So CJ Stroud just offers a safe floor every single week. Like, there's only been a couple weeks this year that you were disappointed in starting CJ Stroud. One of the best rookie seasons ever at this point. I think he's almost there, he's right there with Patrick Mahomes in fantasy points per game. And he's getting it done, with not a terrific offensive situation. Certainly he's entering very high status in dynasty leagues, but in redraft leagues, he's somebody you're locking in your lineups in one quarterback leagues, just based on where you see the games he has ahead of him: Cincinnati, Arizona, Jacksonville, Denver. Those are all games that you're firing up CJ Stroud. So I'm very excited about him. I won't spend too much time harping on this. Is a waiver wire podcast, and he's not even available in that many leagues, so I'll keep it going. Cade Otton. He's one of my favorite players. He just seems to get it done every single week. He's had above 6 targets the last 3 games, 9 targets this past week, 6 receptions, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. We know Baker Mayfield doesn't like to air it out too much. So Cade Otton getting a lot of work in this rough tight end landscape. I think he's entering into kind of streaming territory. This is his first week. He finished in the top 12 tight ends, but he has finished within the top 18 tight ends on 4 other occasions for the fifth time this season, this past week. So are you starting him against Tennessee next week? Probably not. Are you starting against San Francisco the following week? Probably not. But somebody to keep an eye on. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not probably spending waiver wire money on Cade Otton this week, considering his tough next 2 matchups. Somebody I'm not really excited to get out there. But in a couple weeks, when he's forgotten about, if you don't have anybody else to start in your tight ends at the tight end position, consider firing up Cade Otton. He's going to have probably a couple big weeks this year. You could see that against Atlanta and Jacksonville, a couple of these other teams, but we will see. Tennessee's also fairly soft in pass coverage. They just haven't been giving up to the tight end position this year, but that kind of almost just, have you played Travis Kelce? Have you played Mark Andrews? That's essentially what that stat is. So Cade Otton, if you're desperate this week, somebody to consider, throw a couple bucks at, but don't get overly excited about Cade. Quentin Johnston. Woo! That was rough. That was very rough. It wasn't going to happen with Mike Williams out. It wasn't going to, and Josh Palmer. When is it going to happen for Quentin Johnston? 3 targets, 2 receptions, 14 yards, hardly used out there. Justin Herbert had a rough game, but I know this is a tough New York Jets defense, but Quentin Johnston just seems worlds away. He's the thumbnail for this podcast. I made the thumbnail for this podcast this morning, and Quentin Johnston I thought would be the perfect player to have on the thumbnail, but that is not the case. Quentin Johnston looks worlds away from competing this season, at least for fantasy leagues. It's not somebody I expect to be fantasy relevant. Josh Palmer. I mean, Josh Palmer, it sucks that he's going to be out because I just don't know what they're going to do because Quentin Johnston just doesn't seem to have it at the moment. I thought he was going to be more of a developmental prospect. Quentin Johnston was raw coming out of college, not particularly refined in his route running. Doesn't play up to his size, drops the football in those kind of tight windows and contested catch situations. So he was always a little bit more of a player who was going to have to be, develop. And I think that's what it's going to be. I think 2024 is when we can consider, we'll pay attention to the offseason reports. If Quentin Johnston's lighting up, I won't be against drafting him, but it's not going to happen this season. It's impossible not to draft the potential wide receiver or to at least put a waiver wire bid on him. It's literally impossible. Josh Palmer's on IR. He's not coming back anytime soon. Quentin Johnston's going to have to be out there. But so he's somebody I'm still willing to throw in $12. But man, it's literally only going to have to be because he's the only one. It's got kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs with their wide receivers, like Rashee Rice. He has to be kind of relevant at this point. Justin Watson has to be relevant a little bit at this point because Patrick Mahomes has nobody else to throw to. Justin Herbert's a terrific quarterback. He's going to have to throw to somebody. Quentin Johnston, he's going to flirt. He's going to be in my wide receiver 4 against Detroit next week because he was so abysmal this past week. But, I have to think he's going to start getting into wide receiver 3 territory because if he doesn't, you can consider him a major, huge bust already in his career because if he doesn't get a go in these next few weeks with this open opportunity, I don't think it'll ever happen, especially when you consider rookie wide receivers breaking out earlier and earlier. Dalton Schultz, he's rostered in 71% of sleeper leagues. He's probably rostered where you're at. Tight end 1 this past week, top 12 tight end, top 6 tight end, actually, 4 out of the past 5 weeks. Dalton Schultz getting it going. I've been making a lot of jokes about Dalton Schultz this year, about his lack of pay. You might say I always make a lot of cracks that he'd be the 38th highest paid punter in 2023. That's kind of it's not totally true. He's actually making like $6 million in roster bonuses. They spread out his cap over like 4 years. He had a weird contract this year, but he didn't even have as big of a contract as even like Josh Oliver, which is absolutely incredible to me. And I'm going to get everybody's comments in just a second. I'm doing the show by myself today, which is a little bit harder. I'm usually a little bit more on top of the comments in the chat and everything like that, but I'm moving everything around. I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, my computer, half the keys aren't working right now. My dog had ACL surgery. I'm walking the tightrope today, I said. So I appreciate you bearing with me. Daniel Keanton in the chat. All my players didn't score a single touchdown this week. Lamar, Ford, Moss, Tyreek, Pickens, McBride, Nass, 20 years playing, first time ever. I feel like I lost. I don't know if I paid attention to that. I've had some rough weeks. I never paid attention if my players any of them scored a touchdown. Of course, I do release an article every week. A little shameless shout out. I do release an article on SGPN every week covering flex players based on touchdown opportunity. I'm floating around a little over a third of my picks. I'm about like 38% of my picks this season. Had 2 out of my 5 this last week. That's making a little bit of money if you're betting on those. And yeah, I'm having success with my deep league flex players. So feel free to check out that article highlighting some deep flex players that hopefully might have a big week if they score a touchdown. Derek in the chat. Mostert or Monty, rest of season, half PPR. Wow. That's so tough. That's really tough. Because Devon Achane, of course, coming back very shortly, had a very successful stint with Miami. Jahmyr Gibbs playing fantastic football. Man, it's such a tough question. I'm going to barely, and I mean, I'm going to lean David Montgomery just a little bit, just because I still think no matter how much we want Jahmyr Gibbs to be out there, no matter how good we think Jahmyr Gibbs is, I'm afraid that Dan Campbell is going to continue to get David Montgomery out there, especially on that early down rolls. It's never going back. Jahmyr Gibbs is never going back in the bottom, but David Montgomery would not surprise me to see both these guys finish as top 20 backs. I'm a little bit concerned with Raheem Mostert's health as we get later on in the season. He's always been that type of player to get injured. And, of course, Devon Achane coming back. Derek also pointing out he's glad to cut QJ on the bench this week. Yeah, I don't have a lot of exposure to Quentin Johnston, so I never had, I didn't have any. Can't think of one league I actually have Quentin Johnston in, so I was never faced with that decision, but that was a good decision. Thinking of trading for Monty, really great schedule for playoffs, and Dolphins have one of the toughest. That's also a great point. That's a great point about the Miami schedule. I've been looking at that. I've been talking about two of the last couple of weeks, and it's a very tough schedule. And Miami, of course, has really faltered in these tougher matchups as well this season. So that's a very good point, Derek. Further, the reason why to take David Montgomery. David, and of course, yes, Devon Achane coming back in week 11. Very excited about that. I believe, yes, Dolphins do have a bye week this week because, yes, the Chiefs do, and they played in London. Right, yep. So bye week this week, Devon Achane coming back after the bye week. Very excited about that. So David Montgomery over Raheem Mostert for me. Real quick before we dive into the rest of the waiver wire show, I just have to give one more shout out to our sponsors. And that first one being Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Of course, going to those big ticket websites is just terrible. You just look up the site fees. Like you look at a ticket that's supposed to be $200 and ends up being $350 out the door because the site fees. It's not like that on Game Time. Game Time is fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theaters near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hype for the fun that you're going to have. Just looking through here, I'm always looking for my Chiefs tickets, my concert tickets, my Tool, my Pantera that I've been to recently. All those rock shows I got on the Game Time app. Flash deals and last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area and images of the seat views. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, and theaters. Get images of your seat too. It's great. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CFBX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CFBX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Hall of Fame bets as well. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame bets, the sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame bets revolutionary parlay optimizer as well to get hit rates broken down by leg as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame bets app or visit hofbetsbets.com and use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame bets. And we are back. For those who listening maybe on a podcast, I have to do a little 5-second little break there to maybe get another little shout out from our sponsors. But we are going to be diving into the rest of the Waiver Wire podcast today. Up next. Let's see who's up next. Because like I said, I'm missing Justin today. He's usually my partner in crime. He's even mentioned in if you looked at the description, I was expecting to have him today. So it's just me though. But moving on here. Oh, this makes me sick. This makes me want to puke. Jonnu Smith. God damn it. Jonnu Smith is the next man added on sleeper. It makes me sick because I have so much Kyle Pitts. Tight end 6 this week, 100 yards receiving. Third big game this year. Jonnu Smith is not somebody who I want to. He's not somebody I want to fire up in 12-team leagues, just traditional redraft leagues. He just doesn't have the upside on a weekly basis. He has a very low floor as well. Like, gosh darn it. He's probably in deep leagues and 2 tight end leagues. Jonnu Smith is becoming almost as a good of a starting option as Kyle Pitts. I hate it. Arthur Smith hates fantasy football. He's not a very good coach. I'm glad to see him losing because that's the best thing that can happen to Kyle Pitts and Drake London. I usually don't say I want to see people be unsuccessful, but Arthur Smith's a jerk. He's kind of, yeah. I mean, to hear his kind of dismissiveness toward reporters, like, why aren't we using our best players? Oh, that's a legitimate question. And he's like, you guys don't know football. How dare you? It's a real question why you don't use your 3 top 10 picks of these last 3 years and you're giving the ball to Tyler Algier and Jonnu Smith instead. It's outrageous. It's what it is. So I'm glad to see him losing. I'd like to see him not be a Falcons head coach next year. Taylor Heineke, I still think it's good for Kyle Pitts. If it was going to be, it seems like Kyle Pitts' week should have been this past week, especially with London out. But Kyle Pitts will be that boom bust option. He'll probably, you don't have probably anybody start over Kyle Pitts. Kind of gets 8 or 9 points. He's kind of dependable for that. So nowhere near the ceiling. We're all disappointed in Kyle Pitts, but somebody who we're still firing up in fantasy lineups, I think, most of the time. Baker Mayfield. Top 12 quarterback 3 weeks in a row. It's pretty impressive. The landscape's pretty bleak. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Rachaad White, Cade, Otton. It's a talented team down in Tampa. There's no doubt about it. He's still sitting outside my top 12 quarterbacks this week by a little bit, but if you're dying at the tight end position, Sam Howell would be my first choice if he's still miraculously on your waiver wire. But Baker Mayfield, and if you had Daniel Jones and you have Deshaun Watson, or you're just you're treading water. Geno Smith is another one. If you have any of those quarterbacks, I would consider turning to Baker Mayfield. Facing Tennessee coming up. San Francisco's a tough matchup, but Indianapolis, Atlanta, Jacksonville, good fantasy playoff schedule. So Baker Mayfield, I'd throw $5-7 on him if you were very needy at quarterback, but he's not somebody. If you have a dependable starter, you can leave Baker Mayfield on the bench. Derek in the chat, waiver wire going to be interesting this week in my league. On Sunday morning, one guy dropped Dell, another dropped Dak. Wow. I have 2 in Kyler, but thinking of going for Dak and trading for a quarterback. And trading in quarterbacks. That's tough. I wouldn't break the bank because, especially in a redraft league, one quarterback, there's not, I don't know, your league better than I do, but at least in mine, there's not a strong trade market. Like, people kind of brush off the quarterbacks or start Sam Howell, you know what I mean? Or somebody like that. And they're like, I don't need him. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't break the bank to anticipation of making a trade because it's always tough in one quarterback leagues to get proper value. But Tank Dell is interesting. I don't know if you heard me earlier. I did talk about Tank Dell. He's somebody who I'd spend $20 on, depending on, of course, assuming maybe, non-FAAB league. Then you're at the mercy, of course, your waiver wire priority, which I would always recommend getting your league switched over to FAAB. Adds a little bit more strategy, not as much luck. But Tank Dell would be my priority over Dak. Dak Prescott still hovering around 30 pass attempts a game. He's been extremely efficient these last 2 weeks. However, I just don't know if that kind of level is consistent. He's still, I think, for the remainder of the season, he's going to have some big matchups. It's certainly a brighter outlook than we had a couple weeks ago, but Dak Prescott still floating around as a low-end quarterback one for me, not a true difference-making starter. However, like I said, that could be beginning to change. He's on a pretty good hot streak. So just rolling waivers, going to push for FAAB next year. Yeah, Derek, that's my idea. I switched all my leagues over. It's a lot better, I think. Moving on here, Gerald Everett is one of our next tight end up. Gerald Everett had a horrible game. I'm sure these kind of are these sleeper order, a little bit of affected before this game, but Gerald Everett, top 10 tight end 2 weeks in a row, but then, yes, fell back down to earth this past week. It was a disaster for the Los Angeles offense. I'm not reading too much into it. I'd spend a couple bucks on him if you're desperate at tight end. Detroit's a solid streaming matchup. And of course, with Josh Palmer on IR, somebody has to step up. If it's not going to be Quentin Johnston, Gerald Everett, he's had his moments this year, back-to-back games with a touchdown before this week. He's not somebody you feel great about starting, but, I mean, it's hard to find anybody better if you're one of those teams who's trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel every week for a tight end. So, Gerald Everett, throw a couple bucks on him if you need him, but not a priority wire ad for me this week. Kyler Murray. He's probably rostered where you're at 61% of sleeper leagues, so probably rostered in your league, but Kyler Murray, I mean, it's hard to find like 12 or 15 guys you'd rank over Kyler Murray, even in his first couple weeks back. I can't trust Kyler Murray this week. I cannot do it. But I am keeping him stashed in some of my redraft leagues. I think top 12, top 10 upside is certainly within his range of outcomes, especially when you just consider the scoring for the quarterback position as a whole this year is way, way down. Now, maybe that translates to Kyler Murray too, but if we see just the Kyler Murray we saw last year, that's a top 7 ranked fantasy quarterback this season. There's just not a lot of guys who are blowing the people's socks off out there. Patrick Mahomes is even kind of struggling with this wide receiver core. Justin Herbert struggling a little bit. Josh Allen, it's getting it done for fantasy, but he's leaving a lot out on the table with the turnovers. So Kyler Murray, he certainly could do a lot worse. I'd definitely be stashing him out there. A couple of guys desperate for a quarterback. Derek says in his league, feel like Dell will be snagged before I can. Yeah, like I said, Dak Prescott, I think, will have it. He's going to be the starting quarterback for the remainder of the season. So if you think you can sell him or sell to or Kyler, I certainly would do that. We'll go through a few more names here. I'll try to find a little bit more less rostered players because Cole Kmet rostered 75% of sleeper leagues. He's been he's actually been very good this year. He's the tight end 5 on the season. Wow. That's crazy to even say. And I feel like nobody even was telling you to start him for a long time, but he's finished as a top 12 tight end on 5 out of his 8 occasions. He's finding a way to get it done even with Badgett out there. So Cole Kmet must start player at this point. Jake Ferguson, 74%. Sam Howell, 62%. Lock him into your lineups. I won't talk about him too much because he's rostered in most leagues. But Sam Howell, I'm firing him up where I have him. He's a top 12 quarterback until he's not. They have the highest pass volume in the league. They're consistently playing from behind, or their defense isn't very good. They just traded their 2 best pass rushers. Yeah, Sam Howell's going to keep flowing that football. It doesn't look pretty, but hey, we'll take it. Sacks don't count against us in football unless you have some unique league settings. So fire up Sam Howell. Ty Chandler in a deep league, maybe. He's 4% rostered on Sleeper. He's not a priority ad for me. This rushing offense is just horrible. Nobody's getting it done. So I know Alexander Madison found the end zone this week, but still, nobody very excited for me. I'm not very excited about that backfield. Up next here, Khalil Shakir finally getting some playing time. Past 2 weeks, 65%, 71% snap count. I think that'll start because Gabe Davis appears to be fading. Khalil Shakir, somebody throw a buck or two on. If you're in a standard redraft league, maybe your last bench spot, you're still holding Khalil Shakir, but not somebody I'm throwing 10 or 12 bucks on or anything like that. But I liked him before the season. I like the talent. And Josh Allen's begging for one of these other wide receivers to step up. So if it's not going to be Gabe Davis on an every week basis, it could be Khalil Shakir. Deshaun Watson, he's in 65%, but he got dropped by a couple teams this past week. People love to hate Deshaun Watson. I get it. It totally makes sense why people love to hate Deshaun Watson. He deserves it, especially how he's played this season. But he gets it done. When you look at the box score at the end of the day, I think you're going to see him within the top 12 quarterbacks more weeks than not. He gets it done. He gets to add a couple points on each week with his rushing upside. The Browns' offense is pretty good, especially even without Nick Chubb. It's a good offensive line, solid skill position players. I think every week Deshaun Watson's it's gonna be ugly, but Deshaun Watson's gonna find his way in the top 12 quarterbacks a lot of weeks. So I think you could do a lot worse on your waiver wire. Of course, I notably have a head shaving bet with my co-host I keep referencing on the show. Deshaun Watson doesn't score more fantasy points per game than Jared Goff, which it's not looking good. I'm going to have to shave my head in December. I had an out at if he played less than 14 games, but he's only missed 3 games so far, and he's back. If he doesn't miss another game, I'm locked into this bet. I'm a little nervous. I won't lie to you, but we'll see. Justin would rock a better shaved head than I do, so please root for me and wish me luck in that. We'll keep, just a lot of these guys are pretty rostered. Hunter Henry, just quickly, tight end 9 this past week. He's a streaming option when you're desperate. Hunter Henry, just up and down. You can never predict when those weeks are going to come. Antonio Gibson, I feel like played his usual role this week. Has 5 receptions these back-to-back 2 weeks, but still such a minimal role in the rush game. You're not finding him up with any confidence. So Brian Robinson took the vast majority of the rush attempts, still the back that you want in Washington. Luke Musgrave, tight end 7 this past week. Another player I just don't think that you know when you can start him. Deep league, flex option, tight end starter, maybe when you're super desperate. Throw a couple bucks at Luke Musgrave if you need to. Tyler Algier, 54% sleeper leagues. I mean, if you have multiple flex positions, you can do worse than Tyler Algier. I'd throw 10 or 12 bucks on him. He's getting 50% of this work. It's probably going to keep being that way, to my frustration and the other Bijan Robinson fantasy managers. But yeah, Tyler Algier probably, if you had 2 or 3 flex options, you're probably firing up Tyler Algier. Low ceiling, high floor option. Deontay Foreman. I wish Jamie was here. I don't know if you guys know Jamie. He's one of our best listeners. You can see him in maybe almost every single chat. He's probably a little late for him. That's why he's not here. But he's in almost every fantasy football podcast chat like ever. And he's also the biggest Roschon Johnson fan you'll ever meet in your life. So he's probably catching this tomorrow. He's going to hear me talk about, how rough it is for Roschon Johnson right now. Wow. It's not going to happen this season. Roschon Johnson can be dropped safely, unfortunately. If you are still hanging on hope. We're pushing it next season. I don't know if he's a particularly special talent. I've always really liked the player. I think he grinds out, does all the tough things and blocking and does the right things out there, but not an overwhelming running back talent, in my opinion. That's not very popular among fantasy analysts or player profiler where I work, but Roschon Johnson belongs on waivers and more of just a deep dynasty stash, I think. But Deontay Foreman, 20 rush attempts, RB26 this week. I think Khalil Herbert's going to be back, but Deontay Foreman hasn't done anything to lose work. So I think Deontay Foreman, this is going to be why I'm not very excited about Deontay Foreman, is just because I think this is just going to be a running back by committee in a bad offense. Justin Fields coming back, taking rushing work too. I don't think you're going to want to roster or really start any of these players. As long as Khalil Herbert's out, I think you can start Deontay Foreman as a RB3, but that's not very exciting, especially considering where the running back landscape is this year. Demario Douglas, 45% of sleeper leagues, 19 targets the last 3 weeks. Yeah, he's out. I think he's a flex option now. I highlighted him in my article this week. He didn't make it into the end zone, but he did have a fairly productive week. Wide receiver 31. You're not too disappointed with that stat line. So Demario Douglas, I think wide receiver kind of wide receiver, low end wide receiver 3 production can be found on a tree anywhere. So not breaking the bank, but if you're desperate, you're looking for somebody to start next week, injuries or bye weeks piling up on you, Demario Douglas, throw a couple bucks on him. All right. That's it. We're going to wrap it up here on the Waiver Wire podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you, Derek, for checking in the live chat. Daniel, we really appreciate you. You'll see Justin this week. You'll see Dynasty Dorks, Dave Heilman. All these guys will be providing daily fantasy football content on the SGPN network. You can find me on SGPN, on Player Profiler, on Face Off Sports Network, all those places doing, check my Twitter handle at Dynasty_analyst. I'm posting podcasts and articles almost every single day, grinding away. I'm going to be crash landing into like week 17 after this fantasy football season because I'm going to be fried. But I'm going to make it these next 8 weeks and rock it out. So thank you so much for checking it out, everybody. And you all have a great rest of your evening.